Hello everybody and welcome to day 20 of the YouTube Advent Hop for live art journaling and self-development. Today we're exploring bringing the dark into the light, and we're going to make some beautiful Advent lanterns, little star shapes which you can also use to celebrate winter solstice. My name is Jolene Payne and I am a psychotherapist and art facilitator in the UK. We're going to use some mediums that move well with water, and so I'm going to use acrylic ink. I've got some of this watercolour powder that you can sprinkle, and you can use any of that. This is another acrylic spray paint. The lid is a bit duff, so I'm going to need to extrapolate some of that. I've got a spray bottle. I've got a little template of a pentagon there. And I've got some paper. Now you need thin paper, so either computer printer paper or just some scrap paper. You're going to need a mystery ingredient, and that is olive oil, would you believe? I can't tell you what wonderful thing this does to paper. And you're going to need some cotton wool pads, or you could use an old rag or some tissue paper. Now the reason that we're going to use thin paper is because we're going to actually construct our lantern from this, and thick paper would be far too difficult to fold. So I want you to spray down either side of your paper, and then we're going to randomly cover it with inks and goodness knows what else. I don't think you really need a lot of description to see what I'm doing here, but essentially you're using lots of your movable material and medium on top of this already saturated paper, and that means it becomes quite delicate, so be quite careful as you handle it. But it also means we can smoosh it around and create some amazing patterns, marbling patterns on top of our paper. If you do use this powder, you can use it in two ways. You can either put it down when the paper is quite dry and move it about, or you can, like I am doing here, just sprinkle it on the surface, and that will also mean that you get some lovely sort of clumpy elements of it. Now you want all of the first layer of paper to be covered, so you can see me just using the water there to move it around. And then I put a piece of paper over the top of that. That's going to lift up that paint. I flip it over and get another piece and press it down. In this way we can start making our prints appear on all sides of our paper without making too much of a mess. Though I have to say, those of you who know me, I do like making a bit of a mess. So I'm going to make all of these papers, and then I'm going to leave them to dry. It's quite important that you leave it to dry rather than you get a heat gun out and try and dry it quickly. Let it dry naturally, and then it'll dry really nice and crispy. I'm going to show you here exactly the same process, but using a slightly bigger pad. I've sped it up. This is just a pad of scrapbook paper. Very thin, kind of, sketchy paper that you would give a child to draw on. While you're watching, I want to tell you about our Facebook group, Live Art Journaling and Self-Development, because that's where you're going to find all the links to all the other Advent videos that many of our wonderful YouTube friends have come on board to support us. Every year we ask them to bring all of their talents to construct a wonderful gift on the days leading up to Christmas. And this year, well, we need a few gifts, don't we? Let's be honest. So do check out the description below. And also, I'd love it if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's through you, our dear subscribers, that mean that we can carry on doing the work we do. Here's my papers, all lovely and dry. You can see it gives this lovely marbling effect. And now what I'm going to do is grab some olive oil, and I'm going to saturate these with olive oil. I use the cotton wool buds just to move that olive oil around, and what you're going to find, especially where you can see the paper is white, that it's going to give this sort of crisp, translucent feel. it almost feels quite plasticky when it's done. So just sprinkle the olive oil over, get it all wiped down. What I hope that you'll notice as I'm doing this is any areas which are not covered in olive oil, you can really see them. They tend to be quite white, they tend to look quite dry, so just get that all covered. I think you'll be quite amazed at how this paper transforms very quickly, but we're going to need to leave this for 3 hours on a radiator or overnight, because the olive oil will soak into that paper very, very well, and you'll end up with this really bizarre, weird paper. That's all I can describe it as. It's sort of thick. It's a bit like glassine envelopes, I suppose. It's a really wonderful thing. It's quite brittle, so you wouldn't want to sew in it. But it is beautiful and lovely when you're using it combined with light. Now I've just downloaded this pentagon template off of Google and printed it off, and it's 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters. Mine is. Realistically, you wouldn't want to go any smaller than that, but you of course could go bigger than that. You could make a giant one. So you can get these very easily. If you have any trouble at all, just come on the Facebook page and ask me, and I'll show you how to do it. But essentially go on Google, type in pentagon template, and you'll find a whole load of them. And then just use your Word program or any program where you can print off images to size it up to be 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters. You get me. Print one off and then just use that to draw around. Now for each candle holder you will need 11 pentagons. So draw around them. I actually found out, trial and error, that you could get 6 shapes out of an A4 or a letter size piece of paper. Now I've got a lot of pieces of paper there, you can see, and I end up cutting them all out, as you can see, and I've got all sorts of different shapes and colours, and over the next few days I'm going to be folding all of these up and making a whole load of lanterns, and these will go on my dining table on Christmas Day. Take your template again, and what I want you to do is keep folding it in half all around the pentagon. What we're looking to do is to take the crease that is on the straight sides, that's on the middle, and we're going to use that to make a little mark so that we can find the central point on each side. And then what you're going to see me doing is I will place this template onto my pentagons, and I will use where those folds are to make some little marks on my painted sheets. Now I've kept most of the film footage from this in. I know it's a little bit tiresome to watch perhaps, but it's worth sort of keeping an eye out, because as with many of my tutorials, it's far easier to show you than it is to tell you what I'm doing. So now what you need to do is you need to fold from one of those little marks to the other. And the easiest way to do this is to use a ruler, place one ruler from one mark to the other, and use another ruler or perhaps a bone folder or a pen even, just to fold up the edge and fold it over into a point. And you're going to do that all the way round so that on each side you have a little triangle flap coming into the middle. Now believe me, when you've done this to 11 pentagons, you're going to need a cup of tea and a bar of chocolate. So as I said earlier, this project is about bringing the light into the dark, and there's something quite magical about nighttime when the stars come out. And that's exactly what happens with this lantern. As you're constructing it, you won't necessarily see all these little stars that are made very obvious by the folds right now. But they will be beautiful when the lantern is finally finished. Now this is really going to be a tough one to try and narrate. But essentially, when you put two pentagons next to each other, they both have little triangular flaps. And one of those flaps needs to stick over a pentagon and the other flap needs to stick under. Now I promise you, if you have a good old look at the screen, you're going to see what I'm doing. So I put a layer of glue on one side of the pentagon on the inside of the flap, and on the other pentagon it goes on the outside of the flap, so that when I stick those two together you have a triangular flap on both pentagons, one from each pentagon. Now later on in this video I did actually slow things down and show you perhaps a slightly easier angle as to how to fold these out. But basically you've got to stick these pentagons together. So I've put the glue on the inside of that flap, and on the other pentagon I'm going to put it on the outside, and then I overlap them, and the two triangles enable these two pentagons to stick together. Now again, I'm not going to speed this video up because I think it's one of those things that's quite tricky to describe, and probably is much easier if you watch how I do it. So keep your eyes peeled, you know, press pause now and then, see what I'm doing. I am going to lift the product up and down now and then so that you can see what I'm doing. Get sticking, you'll love it. Okay, time for me to come on and try and explain what I'm doing. So I've got 5 of them stuck together already. And now what's going to happen is those 2 side bits, they're going to stick together. And what will happen is this will start coming together to form a bowl. Now if any of you can hear some rattly noises going on in the background, there's sort of a storm going on outside my window. It's quite fun to be talking about bringing the light into the dark when there is a raging storm rattling at my window. So just remember, on one flap you're going to put glue on the inside of the flap, on the other flap you put glue on the outside, and then those 2 flaps overlap each other's pentagon. Imagine it's 2 friends giving each other a cuddle, and one arm needs to go under the other. In fact, that's probably the best description I could have used to describe this whole complicated process. So the rain is still pouring down. I've switched microphones and hoping you'll hear me better. We're going to start doing the top layer now of our star lantern, and this really is where it gets a bit tricky, and all I can say is to just keep your eyes on me. It will make sense when you start sticking it together. You'll see where they need to go, each pentagon forming the next, to start closing in this bowl shape now, because we're coming towards making a lantern. It's all completed when you have this sort of shape with a hole at the top, because of course we need a hole. Where else would we put our beautiful candle? I'm just going to show you here, slowed down, how you stick these 2 together. You can see I've got a left pentagon and a right pentagon, both with their flaps. The first bit of glue goes on the outside of one pentagon, and the next bit of glue goes on the inside of the flap. You put the 2 pentagons together, fold edge to fold edge, and stick those flaps down. Now this becomes more and more tricky as you bring this pentagon lantern together. Certainly the last pentagon that you put in is the trickiest, and I promise you, as you fold it all and stick it all together, it will become very obvious where each pentagon goes. Here's our lantern. I've made 2 so far. I do hope that you'll give it a go. If you get stuck at all, please do come onto the Facebook page and let me know. It's so magical when you light your candles. All of those stars that appear. Please take care. Please obviously always watch a lit flame. And please head over to our Facebook group and come and say hi and let us know how you'll celebrate this Advent time.